Welcome back. Another episode of Blurry Creatures here in the basement with screenwriter and producer of the Conjuring films series. And Chad Hayes, you have a whole list of things you've created in your life, but probably The Conjuring is something that people will know out there that listen to our show. Welcome.
Thank you.
To Blurry Creatures. And I would love to get it. We're probably going to get more into that story today, but there's so many places we can start with this podcast episode. All the things, spiritual warfare and evil and the things you write about, you bring that sort of that bent to Hollywood, which is cool because I think a lot of people, like we've said in our show, a lot of times things just stay weird and paranormal, but they never get biblical. Yeah. And we kind of married those two things and didn't think that it would become, like a job and something that's bigger than just a hobby. And here we are, like in the studio doing this, and you do that a lot and with your creative work. So it's really cool. But
it's a cool set, by the way.
Thank you.
It's really cool.
Took us a long time to get all these items
but we start every show, and we would be remiss if we didn't.
Yeah,
Chad, we ask all of our guests, everyone from theologians to screenwriters, like, what are their thoughts on Bigfoot? In pre-roll, we were actually talking about this because you are writing or wrote the script for a Bigfoot movie.
Yeah, it's the remake of The Legend of Boggy. It's not a remake. It's a follow-up to Legend of Boggy Creek, that film in the 70s. Yeah,
which the Bigfoot camp,
which is about Bigfoot.
Bigfoot enthusiasts know that.
Yeah,
know that movie.
And that is a movie, of course, with friends of the show, the Robertsons of Duck Dynasty. Mm-hmm. Nate and I, we told you pre were on this last season of that show, looking for Bigfoot with Uncle Si, which was an adventure in of itself.
Yeah,
but
episode 3 of the new season of Duck Dynasty.
Yeah,
I'm still gonna watch that.
And, I mean, Uncle Si was way more interested in telling us about his encounter with a Black Panther that he had in Louisiana. But
lately, Luke, the show has been a lot of haunted houses. We've had a lot lately. It seems like sometimes the show goes into a theme, whether we're talking about a cryptid, we're talking about UFOs or aliens or Bigfoot, but lately it's been the haunted stuff. So it's it's no surprise to me that you're here when we've been kind of in that vein. And I don't know when these episodes are going to come out exactly, but this whole story of, The Conjuring and that.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start.
Well, gosh, you got my mind rolling because, we do a lot of haunted house films, or tours, and I love basing a lot of our. When I say I mean my brother, and Carrie and I. My brother couldn't be here today, so I include him. We do a lot on investigative work on stories because we really try to find true stories. So when we were doing The Conjuring, it was very, very interesting because James Wan, the director, said, well, yeah, maybe we should go shoot in the real house. And I'm like, no way am I gonna do that.
Yeah.
And I think he was kind of half joking about that. But we recently completed work on a film that hasn't been shot yet called the LaLaurie house, and it's a real place in New Orleans in the Quarter. And if any of your listeners have been on the ghost tour, you would have seen this home. It's the last home on the tour. And it is based on a true story of a woman who was a socialite that did weird experimentation in her attic on slaves. And that's where the darkness started with her, she and her husband. But I will tell you, when my brother and I were introduced to the project, I was very aware of the house. I'd been on the tour and I said, I want to go, and I want to go into that house and check it out. And so my brother and I flew down the next day. And it's owned by this really cool guy from Texas. It's like his party house. And there's nothing scary about it. It's 14,000 square feet of just rock and roll. Super cool. Well done. I have chills right now because the vibe in parts of that house is just... And the weird thing is the owner has never experienced anything, but the woman who manages the property when people come and stay there has experienced so much stuff. And the first thing my brother and I encountered was only he and I, and there were 5 of us all together. And we were talking about Cindy Bond, the producer. Her husband, or son, Dylan, was with us and experienced some of this stuff. And my brother and I kept hearing a baby cry, but I would look at you and go, did you hear that? And they go, no. And Carrie was like, yeah, where's that kid? And we would get up and walk around the house, and it just kept changing locations where it was. And we're like, okay. So we ended up going back to the home 3 times and longest time we spent there was a week, and some really gnarly stuff happened to some of the people there.
Like what?
One of the guys, Doug, I woke up in the morning. I was staying up in the principal bedroom upstairs.
But so you're staying in the house?
staying in the house.
You guys are brave, dude.
But I will tell you, in all the work and research my brother and I've done, I just feel super protected. I've never felt threatened by darkness. I just, I cover myself in prayer, and it works. It really, really works. Sometimes these things happen to people who are really kind of non-believers and stuff. But I woke up one morning and I won't say it on the air, but a guy, just a grown adult, kind of screaming and yelling at something. And I got my bearings, and I opened up my door, and the hallway's very wide to the other door, just as his door was kind of rattling back and forth. And it blew open, and he's standing there in his underwear, and you effing with me? Are you effing with me? Like this, he was just utterly terrified. And I go, dude, I just woke up. What is going on? And he woke up to something going boom, boom on his chest, hit his chest twice, looked into the darkness. He saw eyes in the darkness, ran to the door, and that's right when I caught him, and he thought I was holding the door.
So he's trying to get out.
Because he couldn't open it. And he gets out, and that was one of 50 things that may...
Is that, and to start your story, did your brother and you start, how did you get into the paranormal space or into this
supernatural?
Well, we wrote House of Wax, which was the first supernatural.
What year?
When did that come out? I'm embarrassed to tell you, I don't remember.
Well, 2006. When you're brothers, you're young, your creative stuff starts long ago. Before you get into your 10,000 hours, there's a day when it happens.
2005.
2005, yes,
okay.
It's 6, so 5.
Because this is pre-iPhone, everyone. This is pre-iPhone.
Yeah, this is pre a lot of things, And we wrote a movie, House of Wax.
Okay.
For Joel Silver at Warner's. And because of that success, we became the genre guys, and we rolled into 2 more movies right after that with him. We did a movie, a Hilary Swank film called The Reaping, and then another one with Kate Beckinsale called Whiteout. But because of that, these stories start coming your way. With people that maybe you guys, hey, I listened to this podcast and these guys shared this story. You know these guys? Because I believe this and you should track it down. And so we have a team of people who would start to do that kind of research.
Before you guys, are there faith-based horror films? Is there a genre for this or no?
No, but they're starting to be,
So you guys kind of kickstart this whole...
I think because of the success of The Conjuring, which was a massive success in secular and non-secular world, that people started crossing over and beginning to question so many radio shows that my brother and I would do. They would say, A, do you believe in that? And B, if you do believe in it, not even if you do believe in it, does that stuff really happen? And I've just met enough people and seen enough things in my life to go, yeah, it's very real, and if you believe in good, you have to believe in bad. You just have to.
Were you raised in the church? Were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm from a whole handful of pastors and ministers. I mean, just missionaries. And my parents are from Canada. It was the Canadian side of my dad's family. And then we went to, my parents took us to church when we were young, and then we didn't go for a while. I don't know for what reason. And my brother and I kind of got involved. And then when I met my wife a lot of years ago, we got involved in a group of people in Malibu that we just started getting into some cool studies. And Jason Sobel, I don't know if you know him, he's a rabbi that just teaches church about the Old Testament. It's just super, super cool. And he was our go-to guy in Malibu for a long time. And now you should have him on here. I mean, God, Jason just best-selling author and all that stuff that you guys cover. Yeah, I'm challenging you, Jason.
So, I mean, you grew up with this framework. I think the same thing happened to Luke and I. We grew up in the church, and that kind of gave us a little bit of an understanding of angels, demons, weird stuff in the Bible. But when does it start to become this is something I want to incorporate into my work and my creative outlet?
Following House of Wax, we decided we didn't want to do any more gore porn. I didn't want to see kids slicing legs and wrists, and I mean, I'm very appreciative of that film and what it was, but it was a conscious thing to not do that. So that moved it more of what other kind of attacks are there, and spiritual attack is very predominant, in the world of possession, exorcism, things like that. So that kind of influenced us to start doing that research. And then anecdotally, I just started collecting things that would be really good in films. And like when we were doing The Conjuring, when Lorraine Warren was alive then, and my brother and I did a lot of research with Lorraine. And I kid you not, she was in Connecticut, we're in Malibu, and we're talking on the phone, and suddenly you'd hear like voices over the line.
Oh, man.
And she would just start praying right in the middle of our conversation. They would fade out, and she goes, boys, whatever we're talking about, that's called interference. So let's make sure we put that in the movie. And we're like, I don't remember what we were talking about. That scared the crap out of me.
Wow. We're coming up on 250 years, and we want to celebrate our freedom here. And America's ranchers have built this country, and our good friends, Good Ranchers, are helping us bring those stakes to the table.
Absolutely. This is really fun because Ben and Corley, who started Good Ranchers, are actually good friends. And I've been on this Good Ranchers train for more than 2 years. And to have them as part of our podcast is really amazing because I really believe and love their product. We're talking about, unlike other meat companies, Good Ranchers is committed 100% to America. You're only getting 100% American beef or chicken or pork, whatever you want to order from there. From the pasture to the final seal in every box, everything takes place here in America. Real American ranchers and real American meats here. And as we head into a year meant to celebrate America, culture, heritage, and the people who shaped it, Good Ranchers really stands in the middle of that story. I get the cowboy box, which I love. It's got Wagyu beef burgers. It has bone-in ribeyes, which are my favorite, along with a bunch of other steak. I'm big on the red meat. My favorite cut is the bone-in ribeye. I do love the Wagyu burgers as well. There's no mystery meat in there, and I've recommended this to all my friends. We've been talking about this for years.
To support a company that's committed to honoring America's past, present, and future, visit goodranchers.com today. When you subscribe, you'll save up to $500 a year. Plus, if you use code BLURRY, BLURRY, you'll get an additional $25 off your first order. That's code BLURRY for an extra $25 off your first order on top of the $500 you'll save every year just for subscribing. Goodranchers.com, American meat delivered.
When is the story of The Conjuring? When does that story come to you and your brother, and then you begin to write it? Because I mean, it's a true story.
Yeah.
So how does this whole thing happen and get put together?
Well, it's really interesting because it was submitted to Carrie and I, and it was just a couple sheets of paper on some scares that occurred in this farmhouse. And in our mind, it was like, family buys another haunted farmhouse. And that didn't really make it that special, to be honest, and so we passed on it the first time. And then my brother and I were talking about it, and we were aware of Ed and Lorraine, and we were like, wait a minute, didn't they investigate this house? And that's where the whole, let's turn it around. So this is new to me. Let's go investigate from an investigator's point of view.
Yeah.
When they're stepping into act 3 of another family's life. Like, this family doesn't know what else to do. They're like, how do we solve this? What do we do? But most importantly, what we decide to do, and we do this in all our films, if you ask me what The Conjuring was about, I'd say it's a love story between Ed and Lorraine Warren, and oh, by the way, this is what they do for a living.
Yeah.
And so I pull you into that real world that they were in. And she was a very religious woman, and her husband was as well, and very, very prayerful. And she covered that a lot. James had her down to the set, and she walked through our set, North Carolina, and she asked for certain things to be taken away. That she said, anything can attach to anything. So a lot of that was I don't even know how many items were removed.
Did you consciously, when it comes to like creating art, I think with Blurry, like we didn't set out to create a Christian podcast. Mm-hmm. It just, the Christian part of it is just there.
Right.
We're not going to brand ourselves one way or the other. It's just like, we're just going to do it. Is that how you've approached these films? Like,
it's exactly what happened to us. There was never, we did not set to write a religious film at all. All we did was we stuck truthful to the characters. And I will hand it. I know you've had Diana on your show.
Yeah.
And we first met. She was a religious studies expert living in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we shot. And she was hired to help Karen and I go through our script and make everything Catholic truthful. And Ed Warren was a Vatican II guy, language and all that. Diana made that 100%. And my hat really goes off to her because I've been approached by so many priests like, are you boys Catholic? Because you just nailed that.
Yeah.
No, it's our friend Diana. She did all that.
Well, The Exorcist, the movie we all grew up with, very Christian themes in and out of that, and Catholic themes as well. But it's not something that Hollywood had never done before.
Right.
But I think a lot of people want to stay true to, like I think Luke and I wanted to stay true to our faith and say this is a big part of it. But also the faith aspect seems to be written out of a lot of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And that's sort of, I think people can handle it. I know Hollywood probably doesn't want to, has its own reasons why it would or wouldn't, but it seems like you didn't care. You went right into it.
We just went for it.
Yeah.
And
can you tell our listeners the story of this whole story, like in a nutshell too, like kind of
The Conjuring?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they haven't seen it, yeah.
The Conjuring is a true story about a family that moved into a farmhouse. They moved from the city into a farmhouse. They had 5 daughters to just get away from the city and have some country living. They moved into this house and immediately noticed that the mom's personality was starting to change. And as the years went on, they found out, or I may be confusing this with what Carrie and I found out or they found out, but when we were researching the location of their farm, that was originally based on a 500-acre farm. And on those 500 acres was the most odd deaths, like odd, like really weird, like drownings. Like there's 2 families that lived on the 500 acres. And originally the character of Bathsheba, the witch, was in the true story, had married her husband and only gave birth to a child to sacrifice it to Satan. And in truth, she stabbed it with a pair of knitting needles and sacrificed just as her husband came in and saw her doing this. And he chased her, and it was on the first day of harvest, and there were a lot of people there and workers. And she ran to the barn or we changed it to a tree, but it was a barn. And she went up there and she just flat out laid a curse to everyone that was witness to this, and then she hung herself. And most of the people that had gathered were from 2 particular families I can't remember the last names of the families. And when we were researching the movie, what we found interesting is in looking up that 500 acres, and we put this in the film, very weird things happened on those 500 acres to members of those 2 families. Like a car accident taking out 4 members at once on a rural road, and a drowning, and I mean, just weird. The coincidence of all that occurring in such a small area was really
Just like the stackability of
We just interviewed someone who said the same thing.
Really?
That's why we had the reaction we just did. Yeah, farm.
in the Ozarks,
People dying, car crashes,
people,
Yeah.
mysterious
Dogs.
deaths. Yeah.
just everything.
And I have to full disclosure, because to me, when we get involved in these things, I have a real hard time. Like, did I look that up and find that, or did someone tell me that?
Yeah.
So I apologize if someone told me that,
Yeah.
and I said I looked it up, or vice versa.
Well, your brain's probably is way more clogged than ours, and ours feels clogged.
So at this
know.
point, so they move to this farmhouse. The mother's personality begins to change.
Yeah.
Right.
And then they call in.
The Warrens came in to investigate that family. And I don't even remember how long they were there. But in the true story, which we could never do because it's a 2-hour movie, was this
Right.
took place over a number of years.
Yeah.
You know, and the family didn't have the financial means to move out, which is the one question as writers we get asked in every single movie. And you have to have that answer. Why don't they just leave?
Right.
Just leave. So, dad's a truck driver. They have no money. They have nowhere to go. Who's going to take in a family of 7? Indefinitely, all their money went into the farmhouse. Who's going to buy a haunted farmhouse?
Yeah.
I mean, there's all these things that
They're just
take
kind of
place.
stuck.
Yeah,
Perfect storm.
It is a perfect storm. It's funny because one of the real daughters came up to my brother and I on location, and we brought them down there to just do what's called a press kit, where you interview the real family. And like, if you go back to the DVD of it, I think the family's on there at some point being interviewed. And one of them said to my brother and I, was like, oh my gosh, how on earth could you condense all this into 2 hours? I mean, you left a lot out. And I go, well, it's not a miniseries.
Yeah.
It's
So in a lot of stories, like it gets bad for a while before they bring in the experts.
Yes.
So what's happening to where the family's like, we got to bring in the experts?
They just started seeing the intensity of everything got worse and worse and worse. The oldest daughter, Andrea Perrin, And I guess I'll plug her book because she writes about anyone that's really interested should read her book because she goes over all of that in really super great detail. But they saw everything from soldiers, like Civil War soldiers marching through walls. And the scary thing was the spirit of Bathsheba, who had cursed that anyone that tried to take her land would meet an untimely death. And that's what started happening. And they believed that she was the one. Like the mom started dressing in old vintage clothes and went back to gardening old style. And like they said I believe her voice even changed. And
is that the unique element of this haunting?
As far as Bathsheba?
Just like slowly morphing into a character. I don't think we've heard anything like that.
Yeah, it's possession often in the research that I've done and the people that we've met before that have been possessed, it tends to be a very slow process. And, in movie magic, we have to have it happen very
fast,
quickly.
yeah.
But, you referenced The Exorcist. Remember, Linda comes down and she pees in front of everyone. And look how worse it got after that. It was like that kind of thing. It's interesting to me because a lot of people go, well, possession is just mental illness. And it's like, I've seen it go away instantaneously. I have. And a lot of times, my brother and I, we did some work on the prequel to The Omen over at 20th Century Fox. And so we got to go before that story and figure out, where all that was.
Yeah, that was
and
a
what it
creepy
was.
one.
That was super creepy.
I don't see a lot of scary films because I'm one of those people that feels everything. So it's like, it just puts me in a bad headspace for a long time. But I did actually watch the Conjuring.
You did?
Yeah, because it was at the Dollar Theater.
That's so
It's a funny
great.
story. And there was no other movies playing, and we all like piled in and went to Mount Juliet to watch a Dollar. I'm like, all right. But I remember going, this is scary, but this is important.
Wow.
And I don't know where I was in my faith exactly at that time, but it definitely felt like I like that this is all incorporating the faith, and it's not just staying scary for the sake of scaring you.
No, it's all real reasons.
You're out there in those rabbit holes. Who can you trust? What stories can you trust? It's hard figuring out what the information is today. But when it comes to your supplements, you want to be able to trust the company you're dealing with to get those extra nutritional needs that you might need. Who do you trust, Luke? Who can we trust?
Trust Momentous. And listen, it's January, guys. If you're listening here, hopefully you're still holding on to any resolutions or goals you have for the year. And a lot of us, those are health related, especially for us. And I know that's the case. And oftentimes with health stuff, you want to look for the right supplements. There's so many options in a very lightly regulated category. We partner with Momentous because they stand out. They're a high trust brand in a low trust category. I absolutely love their creatine chewables. It's something I've made a ritual of my morning. It's fantastic, and I get all the creatine I need for the day. And the studies coming out on creatine have been insane as far as energy, cognitive ability increases, and really helps get rid of some of that brain fog.
That's right.
I think it's more effective than my coffee, to be honest.
And it's that season where everyone's sniffling, and I've been popping the zinc. They send us the zinc, and I also have the theanine, and there's a whole list of different supplements that you can have and use. And in this 6th season, you can help your immune system out.
And with Momentous, Nate, every formula is made with clinically backed, highly bioavailable nutrients with no fillers, artificial sweeteners, and their testing and transparency is second to none. Every product is independently certified by NSF for sport or Informed Sport and verified for label accuracy. So you're getting exactly what it says on the label. So right now, Momentous is offering our listeners up to 35% off your first order with promo code BLURRY. Head to livemomentous.com and use promo code BLURRY for up to 35% off your first order. That's livemomentous.com, promo code BLURRY.
I'll share with you my aunt, who is no longer alive. My dad's sister was a missionary in India, and she and her husband, he was a pastor, moved their 3 children over to India and started a small church, an orphanage. And I mean, so dedicated, they put their own kids in boarding school while they could do this thing. And they stayed there for 10 years. And on Easter Sunday, they packed up everything and they were heading home, going back to Canada. And my uncle left to return some books on a motor scooter, and he never came back. And they later found him and passed dead on the side of the road. And to this day, they don't really know what happened. And I remember being at an age looking at my aunt and going, how do you just not hate God? I mean, God, 10 years of your life, service to him, and your husband dies on Easter Sunday. And I mean, come on. And she looked at me She was a beautiful, beautiful person, and said, "Oh, you have to understand something. My Herb is exactly where he always wanted to be. He is with the Lord. So just know that." So that became the inspiration for the film I was telling you about, The Reaping, the Hilary Swank movie.
Yeah.
Because that movie opens with a missionary in Sudan, husband, child are sacrificed. She can't get her head around it. And the movie picks up 5 years later where she's now become a miracle debunker. She's out to prove that God does not exist. Because if he doesn't exist, then, wow, she just went down the wrong path and I don't need reasons and all of that. And Idris Elba plays her counterpart investigating these things. And he's a gangbanger that's been shot 13 times and made a deal with the Lord. If you save me, I will serve you. And so when you meet him, he's on fire. He's just out to prove the opposite of what she's out to prove. And it's all fine and dandy until they get an investigation to go to a little town, Louisiana, back in the swamps where the rivers turn to blood. And so have the plagues descended. And that's all I'll tell you if you want to listen to me.
Yeah. Well, it's great. I think sometimes you're supposed to see certain things and you're supposed to have it. I mean, it was like, obviously I was supposed to see that movie.
Yeah.
It's the only one.
Thank you for the support.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
It was only $1.
Which means I made about 1/10 of a cent.
there you go. Hey, I was a musician forever. We didn't,
You know.
we didn't make anything, but you were just happy that somebody like appreciated your art and the thing you put in the world. But I just think it's, it was cool because sometimes we have an experience that we wouldn't want to put ourselves into that experience. It just happens and you have to kind of deal with it. But I remember leaving thinking about a lot of my, a different aspect of faith. And here we are all these years later sitting down talking about your movie, and it wasn't a genre that I would go into. But this family is slowly watching their mom turn in and have a possession. And that is something we do here. It's like the house gets crazier and crazier and crazier over time. And once they kind of know how much they can push the limits, and then they bring in this couple to come help.
Generally, what I've discovered is they create fear. And by creating fear, you create doubt, you create insecurity. They'll go after the vulnerable first, is what we've really witnessed, And you could have someone who's very religious in a family who is witness to this, but also at a loss because they don't know what to do, And the one thing that Lorraine Warren had always told my brother and I, that you've got more faith in your little pinky, and that's the best warrior you could ever, best weapon you could ever use, because that's connected to your heart, connected to your brain, connected to your soul. And so everyone has the power within to make these go away. It's just sometimes it's gone too far and they've lost the control over that.
Did she do something in particular? The mom in the story?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Just happened.
I think it just happened.
She became the target.
Yeah. And like in our film, same thing. Nothing really. So again, I'm not recalling the exact investigation side of what led us to make those character choices for the Lily character and Mrs. Perrin, because she started with bruises on her arm, unsure of where those came from. And then always in our world, supernatural world, there's always the need to put something scientific on it. And until you can't do that, that's what really raises the hair on the back of your neck.
100%. Yeah, we've had a couple of Catholic exorcists on the show.
Yeah.
And one of the things they talk about from the very beginning is that what's important is they rule out any scientific reason, right? So mental illness, schizophrenia, and they have this process by which they go through that to rule it out. Because once you rule those things out, then what's left is demonic.
Yeah.
Which I like though, right? Because I think it's easy in some spaces to make everything a demon and everything is.
Oh yeah.
But the reality is it's much more nuanced, and then when it is, and it's terrifying. Did you go out and visit the actual farmhouse? Is it there? Does it exist?
I have never been to that.
Okay.
We were invited to go do a podcast from there.
Okay.
At one point.
Yeah.
No, we did not. We did not do that. But we went to. We were on location on set the whole time we were filming, and got to experience that firsthand, which was really interesting. Some weird things happened. My brother.
That was my next question. I was going to ask you, like when you're making a film like this, which is obviously It's like Ephesians 5, right? It's like exposing the things of the darkness. What
Couldn't have said
what
it better.
happens? What kind of things happen?
I wish my brother was here because he would share something that happened to him as his wife called him, and she was kind of freaked out. And she'd come out into her kitchen, and they live out in Malibu. And we're on location filming. And they had an elderly dog, this Cocker Spaniel. And she went to the sink, did something in the sink, turned around, and there was a big puddle of, she assumed, pee on the floor, but away from where the dog had been lying down. And she was like, well, that's weird. And she realized very quickly it wasn't pee. And she just got a bunch of paper towels and cleaned it up, went to the trash, threw it in there, turned around, and it was right back in the exact same spot.
Weird.
Man. So weird.
Yeah.
I mean, so weird. And she was very concerned because my brother wasn't home. We were on location. What's going on? And the rest is kind of private, but we talked to Lorraine, and Lorraine kind of did Lorraine stuff, and it never occurred again.
Do you have stuff that happens on set during the filming of this? Like so we talked to
Nefarious.
Nefarious guys, and they told us about it because they shot it all in like one room at a haunted prison, and they were like they had like a priest on hand because they're doing obviously a demonic possession movie. Yeah. And the amount of salt they had brought, and then there was all kinds of crazy things that happened. People getting.
Well, I had a question before that too. So when you're picking this film, is it because there is an element of the paranormal that's kind of an outlier that makes it an interesting story, or that there's some sort of the story ends well? There's a Christian element to it. There's like a theme, or because sometimes when we're trying to figure out what to bring on our show, it's like if it's a one of a kind story, it's a little harder to say no.
I love happy endings, to be honest with you.
Yeah, happy endings. That was I couldn't think of how to say that.
I love it when the devil loses, you know, and people are empowered and able and discover they have the tools to take care of this kind of thing themselves. So I'm a sucker for those. So I would say yes, we gravitate more toward true, happier stories, you know, that can occur. There's a lot of stuff. There's a place called Boggy, India, and my brother and I were doing research on a film. And over in India, they don't call them demons; they call them jinns.
Yes, yeah.
And they believe you can trap a jinn. Where genie in a bottle came, they would be lead bottles, and you would coerce the genie into the bottle and seal it off in lead, and then it could never come out. In Boggy is a random little town in the middle of nowhere. So Carrie and I come in, the only white guys for probably 100 miles, right? And we come in on a dirt road, and as far as we could see, people were lined up to go into this sanctuary. It looked like a rundown compound, you know, and they're all just lined up and waiting so patiently, and it's blistering hot. It's just so hot. And we were with a wonderful Indian producer named Rakesh Mehra, and Rakesh told us a couple of things. He goes, okay, you are going to be allowed to go in, and you're going to witness an exorcism if you wish, but you're going to go by a number of people that claim to be possessed, or families have saved up all their money to bring these individuals to this temple to have the bopas, the religious leaders, remove the spirit from these bodies. And it was really weird because he said, and this is days before we got there, he goes, there will be a large presence of black dogs. And I hadn't seen a black dog. I started looking for black dogs around India and stuff, and notice where they're lying down. Entrances and exits, mostly at entrances. It was like, whoa, okay. So my brother and I are led in. Rakesh brings us in. We have someone showing us up to this upstairs level. And there's a very large, muscular guy. He's probably 6'4". And the other thing is, don't make eye contact with anybody. Just do not look anyone in the eye. And of course, my brother and I are writers, and we pass this guy and we both look at him, you know, in the face. The darkest, most unholy expression I've ever seen in my face. And this man was chained to a wall behind him. But what we noticed is he wasn't sweating. There's no perspiration.
It's blistering hot.
It's so hot. I can't tell you. It was like in northwestern India, up by Pakistan. This is like way up there. And so we looked at him, and it just gave me the creeps. I can go back to that moment right now, and I get chills thinking about it. Walk up to the top of the stairs, and what's at the top of the stairs? About 5 black dogs just laying by this front door. So we go inside, and what they believe there is that once possessed, the possession will protect the body to not be damaged because it's the vehicle for the body. So people do supernatural things that would injure you or I that wouldn't occur. And for example, we saw a little girl about 9 years old. You go up into a room about the size of your studio here. There's people sitting everywhere waiting their turn to go in and have an exorcism performed. This cute little girl about 9 years old is just giggling fanatically, and she's doing backflips in the air, but landing on her back and smacking her head. Bam! Then she would stand up and do it again. Bam! And I'm just like, oh my God, no blood, nothing, absolutely nothing. And I'm just like, I can't, to this day, I could never explain to you why that girl wasn't injured. Anyway, I could go 10 more stories about this, but what happened is later, our Rakesh lasted about 15 seconds in this place, and he goes, "You're on your own. I'm out of here," and he left. And we met him down the street, and we were having a tea later and just talking about this experience. And that man with the eyes walks by with his arms around older people, like I'm assuming his mother and his father, laughing. Nothing looked the same on his face. Absolutely friendly, jovial, eyes that sparkled. And he was as close as you and I. And he walked by.
This is the guy that was chained?
Yeah.
What do you make of that? Like, I'm trying to puzzle, like, if you have these demonized folks and they're going to a temple, the Bible says that Satan won't cast himself out, right? So what do you make of what's happening in that space as a believer? Because unless they're using the name of Jesus, I mean, I would doubt that. Considering
it's all in Hindi, so I don't know what they were saying, to be honest with you. And they told me, or Carrie and I, most oftentimes it's not successful. These people have to repeatedly come back over, and a lot of these people in line sometimes leave for a year and come back next year.
That sounds like a great scam. You know, we'll just work the spirits out for 2 weeks, and you have to come back and pay another fee, and then you have to keep paying money.
Well, that could be that could be some of the deception, though, is that you are getting temporary relief or.
Well, because I think a lot of people do.
We talk about exorcisms like once people have been exorcised, the idea that you're again an empty vessel, and if you do not fill yourself with the Holy Spirit, essentially whatever's there can return.
You know, Heiser said, on the first time I showed, like, I find people come to me and they say they get spiritual healing from these other entities,
witch doctors, etc.
But nothing everlasting.
See, that's interesting because to me, it's like if it's a mental illness, I mean, I don't know how that goes away.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's the difference. It's like, I've never seen anyone walk into a temple, be prayed over, and then leave. Well, I guess miracles do happen, and that can occur. But
I think the interesting part of that about the story too is that demons do, when they inhabit somebody, they do have sort of physical strength that they wouldn't have,
or they change physically too. Like talk about like people's appearance.
So they slowly creep on, and back to the Conjuring story, because my mind keeps going back there. So the mom is, and they're bringing in the experts, this couple to come in and help.
Yeah. And it was, again, I'm going back on my memory. It was a long time ago. Because what I believe is that she was possessed and it got worse and worse and worse. She somehow ended up injuring herself. Something in the garden did something to her. And her husband said that she just, even physically, just changed her whole personality, completely changed. And even her language became very like parochial, like old school, like the way they used to talk. And he goes, they got married like when they were 15 or 18 and goes, never been exposed.
She never spoke like Billy Shakespeare.
No,
that's right.
Nothing like that. Yeah. And so he found that interesting. And then I think when Ed and Lorraine came by, they do blessings over the house like you see in the movie. And in this particular film, I'm trying to remember exactly when Pat Wilson, when Ed, who plays Ed, was doing his whole proclamation, at the end, and you're supposed to be someone of a cloth is supposed to do it. And I remember them saying something, or Lorraine saying something really intense went down there, and that they had to do something that they really didn't feel they were qualified to do, but they still did it anyway. And I think that's what led to that scene in that movie of Ed doing that. But you just made me think of somebody else.
So Bathsheba was the lady that lived there, the original witch.
Original woman.
Okay.
Yeah, she married. I'm sorry, guys. I should have done my homework and gone back.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
She married a guy, and she was just 17 years old. And what no one knew is she was a practicing Satanist at that young age. And so the whole idea of sacrificing the child to Satan and making the proclamation that she did in our movie was always about also what does the spirit do in these women? Why possess these women? What do you hope to get out of it? And her hope was to get the mothers to kill their children, just like she had. And so that's what they figure out in the theme of The Conjuring that Lorraine discovered. And so you have to separate the mother from the kids so this doesn't happen. But I'll let your listeners in on a little interesting bit of trivia is that when you watch The Conjuring, the exorcism scene, you know, with that guy, that's based on a true story of footage my brother and I have actually seen of that guy who was a dairy farmer was in the footage we saw was from the Catholic Church had filmed it, and it was just their resources.
They don't usually do that either.
I don't know why, but it was because this guy, a number of occurrences had happened, and Ed and Lorraine wanted it to be filmed so that it was tangibly proof for them. Because prior to them doing any of this, all they had to do is gather proof, then go to the church and turn it over to the church, and then the church would send someone in to go take care of it. Yeah. So they needed the proof in order to do it. But when you watch that in the film, the guy who plays the priest is in fact a real priest, and you're witnessing a real exorcism in that. I mean, it's acted out,
right?
But all that is 100%.
He's reading the rites and all that.
All that. But yeah, when you see the footage that my brother and I saw was the guy pulling up his shirt and there were crosses appearing. Footage is just so super old and upside down crosses and then blood just involuntarily coming out of certain areas and down the eyes and stuff. And it was trippy. It was really trippy.
So they were kind of called in sort of like CPS almost for the church. Like go see if there's a problem. Let's go investigate. Yeah. And then if there is, then we're going to send in the big dogs.
Exactly. That's how it all started. Lorraine has this unbelievable ability. She is what's called a precognitive. And so she can be in situations and see what happened in certain situations. She's worked with the police endlessly to help them solve murders. I mean, in one particular case, she completely identified the person that they were looking for because it couldn't be solved. And she told my brother and I a story of
Is she a believer? Is she a believer?
Lorraine?
Yeah.
Oh, big time.
Yes. So interesting.
Big time. She and her husband, both. And she was called in by a detective and said, we're just having a hard time. And she said, and it was about a woman that had been murdered on the side of a highway off an exit. And he said, I've heard about you. I would like to know if you have anything that you could do. And she got up to the scene and I won't go into details, but she goes, you need to look for a cop. It was a cop that did this. The guy was like, what? He goes, I need your statement. She went in and she saw who it was in the police station. And she told the guy.
Look into him.
Yeah. And she just had this, like he's so carrying so much burden that if you confront him, he'll spill it. He'll let it out. That's exactly what happened. Something turned into.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. But Lorraine will tell you, I mean, she can read auras on the set of The Conjuring, which was crazy. This guy came up to us, one of the gaffers, and he said, hey, can you ask Lorraine, I understand she reads auras, what an aura in the shape of a red top hat means? And I was like, no, well, you go ask her. And I'm not asking her. I don't know. If you don't want to, don't do it. And so we're having lunch with Lorraine, and I go, Lorraine, one of the gaffers wanted to know what an aura in the shape of a red top hat means. And she goes, literally, and we're inside the commissary. Was it him right there? And it was the guy who had come up to my brother and I and asked us that question. That woman got up out of her seat, walked over to him, couldn't hear her, put her arm over his shoulder. They both walk out of the tent. Come walking back in 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later. He's happy as can be. They hug it out. She comes and sits back down. I go, what happened? She goes, it's not red anymore.
So was that like a...
Anger.
Something demonic?
Extreme anger. Demonically influenced, extreme anger. He was in the middle of a really bad divorce and losing custody of his child. And he only knew he had a red aura because he'd gone to one of those carnivals that shoots the energy pictures. And his daughter had this beautiful angelic aura, and he had his in the shape of a red top hat because they have these machines that can pick up on your energy above you.
That's weird.
It's really weird.
That's really weird.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't even know what to think about that.
And that's like every other day on our show. Something you have to go.
Watch someone go and they have like spikes coming out of their head.
I wanted to get back to, though, because we kind of got off but a little bit, but just sort of, you're creating this piece of art. You're telling this story, this real story with real demonic possession, curses, witches. And we talked a little bit about maybe some of the things that happened behind the scenes. And was there anything else that like that stuck out to you as you're creating this?
Yeah, to answer your question, which was crazy, was my son had just gotten out of film school, and John Leonetti, who was the director of photography for James Wan, they had done Insidious together, and I think he worked on I forget, some other of James' films. And so I called him up and I said, hey, I want to get my son working on this film. And he goes, dude, no babysitting jobs here. I don't do those anymore. You won't. I promise you this will be a good thing. So he met my son, who's 6'4", 210, and really a behind the camera guy. Just loves everything about. Grew up on movie sets, just loves it, and is now off making his own stuff. But he worked in the camera crew, and we were on location where the artifacts room, if you remember in the movie, which is all the pieces that they pulled from, they called it keeping guns off the street. And in truth, Ed and Lorraine had that in their house, and a priest came by and blessed that every single day, just to keep it all where the Annabelle doll was and all that other stuff. And so we wrapped one night, and if you know anything about the movie business, the minute you go, it's a wrap, bam, all those lights, all those expensive lights shut down, and everyone goes to flashlights. And generally, you put a flashlight in your mouth, and then you're just working, or you have a headlamp on your head. And his job was to recoil cable, but he had from the artifacts room that we were shooting in, and the artifacts room weren't filled with a lot of the real stuff from their place, although all those paintings in the movie are real paintings that Ed painted, that we put all that artwork in the real artwork in the film. And so my son is, if you remember that little monkey that goes like this, ting, ting, ting in the movie, the little artifact thing, it started doing that when he was on his own. And then he heard something fall, and he looks down on the floor, and this little symbol that it had or was next to it was on the ground, just spinning on its own, completely spinning on its own. And my son just shot out of there faster than anything you could see. And, camera guys are, like football players.
Yeah, how old is he?
He was 18 at the time. I wish he was here because he tells it much better. It literally just scared the what.
So it's like a movie within a movie.
It was. And he refused to go back in. He just wouldn't. And Scotty, his boss, was like, grow up and go down. He goes, you can fire me. I'm not going in there.
So what's the story behind the Annabelle doll?
Yeah, I was about to ask that.
The Annabelle doll is also based on a true story of how we opened that movie. Is really almost virtually identical to the interview that was done with those people, down to the dialogue when Ed and Lorraine interviewed them. When you watch the opening of the movie, that is almost exactly the interview that occurred with those two nurses, the boyfriend of one of the nurses. They decided to rescue this doll because they heard the story that there was a spirit caught in the door, inside the doll, and so they thought they would bring it home, and blah 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 blah, and then all that weirdness started happening, and the writing on the wall, and the doll would be in different places that they put it. They started sifting flour on the floor, thinking someone was coming in and doing nothing ever occurred like that. And what you don't see in the opening of the movie, which we had put in there that really happened, is the young man had been attacked by the Annabelle doll, like left scratched and bleeding and things like that. And yeah, I mean, just weirdness. And, part of me is like, sometimes things are so real that you wouldn't believe it. Like you would never, it's just hard to believe a doll would or could actually scratch someone. But, we believe an animal could. You know, if an animal was demonically pushed or other humans could. So it's the spirit of the spirit. So I'm
like a poltergeist experience.
Well, exactly. The movement, the energy behind it. And so they actually threw that thing away and it came back. And that was the beginning of the end. I mean, when they were just like, no, no, no. And so Ed and Lorraine took that doll, brought it back to their place, and actually put it in a glass enclosure in their artifact room. And there remained until
Dan Rivera.
Yeah, that guy who took it out on tour and died on tour.
I was about to ask you about that because, I mean...
Jeez. Yeah, so listeners, give our listeners a little backstory. The doll goes in the glass case, and then some guy gets it, paranormal investigator. And
Dan Rivera takes it on tour, and then July of 2025, he mysteriously passes away, which... You look it up and they claim it was unrelated, but it's also like a series of coincidences are not a coincidence, at least in my mind. And
I don't believe in coincidence at all.
Yeah,
actually.
So, well, I mean, the farm, all the bad stuff happening on there.
There's 500 acres. Yeah.
How does that work connected to something that's living inside of the house? I mean, we've interviewed many people who say someone like in a certain square mile, that's where all the negative things happen. Then outside of it, it seems to stop. If there's something connected to that doll, obviously, you could apply the same kind of spiritual physics, I guess, to that. Maybe tragedy follows the doll.
Yeah, or the energy within it, or it's still there. The supernatural knows no time. We all know that, right? There is no time. So it doesn't mean anything to be in a case inside something until the sense of freedom or, the ability to do it again. It's interesting. There's another project that my brother and I are executive producing over at with Jamie Foxx, and it's really cool, and it's called Buried. And Spielberg did Poltergeist, and they built the house on an Indian burial ground. Well, that's based on a true story that took place in Texas, but it wasn't an Indian burial ground. It was a slave burial ground that they found these bodies when they were digging a pool and stuff like that. And so we did a lot of research around there, and a lot of really weird things happened around that property and what they were occurring. So, I mean, I'm just reiterating the fact that when the family moves in our little mini-series and a brand new house, and they're the only second family into this place, and what happens because in the back history is they were marauded by a horrible person that just didn't believe that the black people should be anywhere around his property. And he tried to scare them away and then did a bunch of horrible things, and they took it in their own hands and they killed him and they buried him in their graveyard so that no one would ever find his body, And then a lot of times people sometimes believe in the ritual of the way he was buried in the Caribbean tradition of how they did it. They put his body in a position that he would remain in purgatory for his entire existence, was their belief system. And they had done special things to his body when they put him in there. And then somehow body gets moved, things get changed. My point being the Annabelle doll, it's like, did the spirit ever really leave? Was the spirit always there? I mean, who knows?
Well, I think about
think of Fritz Zimmerman.
Yeah.
Like the mounds in the Ohio Valley where all these ghost shows happen. Usually there's like ancient mounds that are here. Yeah. When they find people buried them a certain way, like they buried them, they didn't just plop them in the dirt, this kind of thing. So it's what you wonder of, like what laws they understood.
Hands up, hands down, head upside down. I've seen all that.
Weird.
Yeah.
The object thing is really interesting. It's always debated too, right? Is this idea that like spirits can attach to inanimate objects. We're really familiar with like demonic possessions and people and things that are vessels, but it's really fascinating when these things become attached to inanimate objects, right? It's highly debated in some spaces. People will go so far to be like, you got to pray everything you bring home from Goodwill. Okay.
People do.
And people do. And then, but the other part is like, that can't even happen, which is really interesting because even the Bible, I mean, they would, the spirits of their idols would be possessed. It was a piece of wood or a piece of stone that their God would possess that piece of inanimate object, right? And it
is, it's more complicated.
Well, I told you, Lorraine walked around our set and was just.
What was she pulling off the set?
Can't remember exactly. There was a very large Raggedy Ann doll, not dissimilar to Annabelle, but very, very large, and we never shot that or used that. And James took it upon himself where he designed that Annabelle doll himself, which was really made out of clay and just wanted to kind of do his own thing on it. He did a really good job.
It's creepy though.
Remember that doll maker just kept coming into the set over and over and no, a little more here, a little more there.
Yeah.
So you said you know, obviously you chase down the happy ending stories. Like, where does the story go from there? How does it redeem itself?
In The Conjuring?
Yeah.
Well, they were able to release the spirit from Carolyn Perrin. Thus gave her the freedom and re-control over her body and her life and her family. And
Did she have memory of anything?
I don't believe she did, honestly. I just don't know. I would refer to her daughter's book, or you can Google this too. It would give you that online, because sometimes it gets lost in that movie blur.
Yeah.
Just
I know, it's been a while for me,
Yeah.
over 10 years.
I want to ask you a question just about like the genre in general. Obviously, you and your brother as believers are telling stories that reveal the supernatural realities and tell some of these crazy stories, but there's a redemptive quality to this. Do you think that some pieces of art that are meant just to be terrifying and in general, and that's the intent behind it, can open things up to people?
Yeah, I think so. I think that people are often witness to terrifying events that change their lives. They don't necessarily, they do affect them personally when you're witness to that kind of thing, you know?
So even if it's simulated in a sense, like in a film, do you think that?
Well, it's what happened out of The Conjuring was, again, so many interviews, like, does that really happen? Do demons really exist?
Right.
Yes, sir, they do.
What about people who are non-Christians on the set? Are they experiencing that? Like, are they starting to ask faith questions?
Not to me. I didn't experience any of that. I'm willing to bet probably to Lorraine, once people got to know her, a comfort zone. I mean, it's a working environment, so part of me is like, do people really want to share how they feel or not? Or I don't really know. I know.
Because I feel like, you know, that's sort of the thing that happens at the cross, you know? The guards are like, surely this was the Son of God. Like, when you're in that moment, you know, even if you don't have the backstory or the faith.
Well, it's sort of like, here's the difference too. It's crazy. So the Lady of Fatima, the three shepherd children, are witness to the Mother Mary in spirit form, that created massive pilgrimage there every single year to try to witness, and they're getting messages from the mother that they now share.
Right.
Chris Bledsoe, who you guys know, right, of Chris, this UFO abductee guy, has the exact same experience. Witnesses the mother, gets a message from the mother. I mean, it's all incredible, absolutely incredible, and nothing negative, all super, super positive. And, well, actually more of a warning, like, be careful, this is where we're heading if things don't occur. In the old days, those children are made into saints, and Chris is just called crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy. And so it's like, wow, where did that turn? You know, where, like, even when the disciples witnessed some of the miracles, they still weren't in 100%, you know?
So she doesn't remember this happens, and, you know, obviously the family has a better ending. I mean, the day we met you, the first time Joe Anderson was in here,
Right. Yeah.
and he's telling his story, it doesn't have a happy ending, you know? And for a lot of us, I think we have this faith where if we just say the name of Jesus, like, it's almost like we take the power into our own hands instead of saying, God, ultimately you have the authority to do what you want to do here. Obviously, I'm going to say in the name of Jesus too, if something's attacking me.
Yeah.
But, you know, as we found, there's not always a happy ending to these stories. How has your perspective changed when starting something like this, getting into this genre, and now?
Wow, it's such a good question. Because the first time I met you two in person was Joe had just done your show.
Yeah, he just
we were
came
with
on.
And
Joe.
he gave me the book, and I read the book, and but what did I say at lunch? It's like, I would never make this into a movie because I want a happy ending.
Yeah.
I mean, God bless the man. It's a horrible story, and he did the right thing. It's a hard thing to get your head around. So how does it affect me? I hear that as often as it works out. You hear it just that same way.
Yeah.
And it breaks my heart. It just really breaks my heart because, you know, we're led to believe miracles can happen. Well, why didn't it occur there?
Yeah.
So again, we can't answer everything because I don't know how to.
How is operating the space? So writing in the supernatural genre and some in the horror genre, et cetera. How is sort of the the research into these supernatural things, how has it changed or impacted your faith?
Oh, even just stronger. Yeah. Just the ability to eliminate the fear is a really big thing. It's not to say I haven't felt like intense moments of being in certain spaces I wish I wasn't at, not mentally, but like physically sometimes. Like, it's just unpredictable. I believe in the Lord and I believe I'm protected, but I don't ever want to feel like I'm not,
Right.
And I guess if that were to occur, it hasn't occurred yet, thank the Lord, but that would be terrifying, utterly terrifying. Yeah. But then my mind as a creator, a writer, I go to, wow, that's the fear these people live in. Mm-hmm. That is the fear they live in.
We've heard people say on the show that like the demonic feed off of fear. They're like fear harvesting. Like that is much of the intent is to harvest people's fear.
Yeah, it was like means. unwritten laws, sort of the gasoline of the darkness.
Well, there's a great book called The Devil Came to St. Louis. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. And it's a book that's based on Robbie Menaheim, who was the Linda Blair character in The Exorcist. He was a kid. He was a boy. And they changed the identity to a girl, to protect his identity, but also they felt there was, I think, more of a vulnerability in a young girl. But in doing that research, and we were turning that into a miniseries that actually has yet to be made. But in doing the research, I came across the diaries written by the 3 priests who performed the exorcism on Robbie. Now, the true story is Robbie was kept at a point in his life in the top floor of a hospital in St. Louis.
Like an asylum.
An asylum.
Yeah.
In a room that he didn't leave for years. And it was in that room they found these diaries that had been left by the priests that were there. And the first time they tried to demolish the asylum with a wrecking ball, the wrecking ball didn't do any damage. It was the second time it went in.
Like the girl falling back on her head almost.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know what that means. Again, it's like all that. But the point being is like one of the priests that went through that the public doesn't know, lost in a very short period of time like 35 pounds and broke out in boils over his entire body. The youngest guy, who was the youngest clergy member, told experiences of how his own dog turned on him. Like he became fearful coming home because his dog got so aggressive toward him.
Weird.
And, just weird. I mean,
that's what we brought a Catholic exorcist on, and he said if they tell you whatever they vomit out of their mouth, that if you touch the nails or the frogs, whatever people vomit out when they're having, when they're being exorcised, you'll break out in boils. And if you touch the
Dan Riho.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense now. I never knew that.
So wild. They tell you in, exorcist school, don't touch anything that's vomited out of the person because you'll break out.
Chad, what's the scariest story that you've come across that you haven't put on into a film or into writing? Like we talk about Joe's, and Joe's doesn't have a happy ending, but are there any terrifying stories you're just like, that's just not, I don't want to touch any of this? Or
oh, yeah. It's mostly when stuff like that happens to kids. I was really affected by his story because it was just so sad.
It's heartbreaking.
It was really, really, really sad.
Yeah, for our listeners, we all went out to lunch with Joe, and you were there too.
Joe Anderson, yeah.
And we were kind of like our first hang because we hung out the night before at Lieutenant Dan's party here in Nashville. But that's another story. And then you kind of and that was really cool of you to kind of listen to Joe and let him tell the story. It was kind of wild how it all happened. We're all there hanging out.
Yeah, just all came around. There's stuff I go, I don't even want to go there. I don't want to look at that. I don't want to be part of that. Yeah. I feel really bad. A lot of times those poor kids are in the sex exploitation market is run by demons, I believe.
100%.
People that are horribly possessed by something that they just don't.
I think I personally think that's the darkest thing there is trafficking, the trafficking of children. I don't think it gets any darker than that. I
think we run in the space of nuance a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, there's a lot of fundamental beliefs about Hollywood. Yeah. It's just all bad and all demonic.
Yeah.
And, you're here trying to tell us there is a lot of immoral decisions that are kind of made behind the scenes. to produce some of this content, but it seems like obviously it's not just about selling tickets to movies.
No, you're going to see there's a huge surgence. I don't even want to say resurgence because I don't think it ever really existed on the scale that it's probably heading toward now. And I think with shows like House of David and things like that from the Irwins, not only can they be educational, they can be entertaining, and they're based in truth. And so I think there's a giant movement step toward those stories.
Giant
movement. I actually do know that because I'm part of it. So it's kind of exciting. But it's it's a way to really tell these really great, truthful stories that have God's work in them and show the influence that faith has on certain individuals. I mean, I go back to David, the House of David. It was so well done. I mean, it was just so well done. And anyone that doesn't even know the Bible, what a great way to learn the Bible, if you think about it.
It's an epic story. It's like, it doesn't matter if you know the story or not. It's.
Did you get emails from people that like watched the movie The Conjuring and then said they found faith?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. We interviewed some people. I mean, New Line had a little theater and allowed my brother and I to each have our own like personal screening of The Conjuring. And so he invited his group of friends one night. I invited my group of friends. And my brother got a call when he got home from the son of his friend who said, "Can I come over and see you?" And they live close to one another. Yeah, of course. And he came over and he goes, "I argued with my dad the whole way home, and I have to know one thing. Are demons real? Are demons real?" My brother said, "Yeah, demons are real." And it changed this boy's life.
Yeah.
And that's when he got the call from the dad and goes, I don't know what you said, but my kids just turn around. And I don't know whether he was an unhappy kid. I know nothing about this kid, to be honest with you, but things changed after that.
Well, I think that's the power of the gospel is it can go anywhere.
Yeah.
Whereas it seems like the darkness wants to stay out of certain areas, but the gospel goes everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's it's the truth. It really is the truth. And it's having traveled to so many different countries and witnessed so many different things, and everyone has different labels for what they call it. Mm-hmm. But I have to, in all sincerity, believe it is all the same thing. And I don't believe that demonic activity is any different in the United States than it is in the Ukraine or, wherever else that we want to go, because evil is evil.
Yeah.
And so, however you label it, that's up to you. But, hopefully you're given the tools to defeat it if it confronts you. I mean,
have you and your brother been confronted by stuff, you think?
The only way I've been confronted by things is by having stuff happen to people around me. Like that story I was sharing you on at the LaLaurie house with Doug. And that was just one. And there was a lot of stuff that happened there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will tell you when we were 18 and graduating from high school, we went to a graduation party in high school and we lived in Lake Tahoe, California.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
One of the most beautiful places on earth.
Oh, it was awful.
Yeah.
It was just awesome.
Terrible
It
spot.
sucked. I had to go skiing all the time. It just really sucked. And I'm sure there was alcohol involved in this moment. And my brother and I lived in a home where you entered from the ground level was the side of a mountain, and all the bedrooms were downstairs. And what sucked is at the bottom of the stairs was my parents' bedroom. And if you were out, their door was always open until you came home.
Yeah.
And they could hear you. And then my dad would get up and close the door. And so we walked down the stairs, and Carrie's right behind me, single file, walking down this long hallway. And we both saw something at the exact same time at the end of the hallway that was very large and very dark, to a point where we literally just dove into a bathroom that was next to us and shut the door. We both were like, what the hell was that? My God, what was that? It looked really ominous. It wasn't human. It looked dark. In Tahoe, you hear all the spirits of the Indians and all that kind of stuff. And
bodies popping up out of the lake, all those stories. Oh, yeah.
The door opens, and there's my dad standing there.
It was him.
Looking over us, and he goes, what the hell is going on? Dad, watch out. There was something just huge at the end of the hallway. my dad made us walk around that entire house, go into every room, turn on every single light. Didn't matter if my sister was asleep, our younger brother was asleep, my mom was asleep. Of course, we didn't see anything.
Yeah.
But I just found that was kind of our first encounter. And because he was behind me and we both saw something at the exact same time, something was there. And then later, this other friend who does those kind of prayerful cleansings on places and stuff, we had her come up there, and she claimed that there was a weird corner in this house that something could have been coming from. And up there's all kinds of burial grounds.
All kinds of weird stuff.
What won't you do now? Like, what's something you wouldn't do or tell someone not to do based on your experiences?
Oh my God, I would never dabble in the darkness of Ouija, or I would never do anything that summoned anything. You're just asking for trouble, you know? I'm not going to go to a bridge and say a name 3 times in the middle of the night and try to manifest some spirit that has made that weird rule, or, you know, you hear these things all the time. And I constantly hear horrifying stories surrounding Ouija boards, honestly. And for the longest time, I thought it's a game, and no one moves it. But now, having seen poltergeist activity and things moving on their own, oh, that really happens.
Yeah.
You can really do that. We are having, Carrie would tell you, we're doing a film that his son, Sawyer, his youngest son, went to school as an exchange student over in Florence. And he moved in with 4 other people to a floor of a villa, gorgeous, that had been transformed for student housing. Well, the family lived on the top floor just to make income or whatever. And the very first time he was there, he was like, oh, let's move this armoire. It was like in a weird place. And they moved it, and there was a door behind the armoire that had been painted over. If you meet my nephew, sorry, is the most inquisitive person in the world. He'll ask for forgiveness after he does things. Goes in, opens up that door, and they found a couple of paintings, and one in particular was very disturbing, of a young boy and 2 girls, and the boy was looking at the artist with a weird look, and the girls were looking away, and someone had depicted that, and they put it up on the mantelpiece, and his apartment / villa became kind of notable in Florence for people going and seeing poltergeist activity. And so he was saying, he would call his dad, and I would hear these stories about how the salt shaker went off the table, a camera got busted against a wall, and people just started showing up to see all this stuff. And it only started occurring because when they put the painting on top of the mantelpiece, and then they found out a bunch of dark stuff that happened in this place. And my nephew wanted to, Dad, this would be a great comedy. And my brother's like, comedy? No. So now we're making it into a scary movie. So
I was just in Florence this summer.
It's so beautiful.
It's a beautiful place, isn't it?
Why do you think people have hangups to believe in this stuff? What do you think?
I think it just raises too many questions, or fear.
Uncomfortable truths.
Yeah. If that's real, then I have things to be afraid of. If I don't believe it right now, I don't have to be afraid of it, In that spiritual world, there is a lot to be afraid of. There really is. And you guys know, you interview all these people that purposely or not purposely participate in these events. And even when I saw, when we were in New Orleans at that house, and something really weird happened to our friend's son, and he left just right then. It was like 1:00 in the morning. And he just left. He goes, I am not staying in this house. And that's when we learned you can't rent a hotel room in New Orleans after midnight. You have to prepay for a hotel room in New Orleans, or they won't rent your room. It's prostitution or something. And he had to come back to the house. And he came back and he told this other buddy, Josh, let's move over, man. I'm staying here.
Oh, wow.
I'm not doing that. And he talked about it. And so every night after that, Carrie and I were the only ones that would stay there, and the rest just went over to the Ace and hung out there. Just we're so uncomfortable with it.
Why do you think inanimate objects get possessed? Like,
Fear.
Fear?
I don't think they're possessed. I sometimes think they're manipulated. Maybe they are. I mean, Annabelle and all that. But I'm thinking, like, when you see a poltergeist, when you see something actually move off a thing, I think it's to jolt you into, like.
So something's hitting that item?
Yeah. And it's making you know something is here that I cannot see.
So you don't believe a spirit went into the doll? Or the doll's...
It's a hard visual for me, to be really honest with you, but something happens.
Yeah.
Something happens.
I remember we talked to an ex-witch, one of the many on the show, and she talked about how she would knit things. She would say she would sew her intentions into these objects, and then she would give them to people that she wanted to curse.
Like a voodoo doll.
Or also as an access point for her when she astral projected. So yeah. I mean, I'm always like, I think there's a set of rules that we don't quite understand that exist with these things, right? Like whether it's like it becomes a portal or an anchor point, or even it can house something.
Well, enough to where you had to put it in a glass case.
Well, that is, yeah.
Like, it's not just like, oh, let's get the spirit out of here and then the doll's cool. It's like, no, we have to lock up the doll.
And
That's
that
weird.
they did. I mean,
Chad, I think my last question would be like, you kind of talked a bit about this, but like what projects that you can tell us about coming up aside from the one in the Florence project? Are you real excited about?
Totally excited. I told you we have a Bigfoot movie that we're putting together with Willie Robertson from Duck Dynasty and Corey his way. I'm super excited. My brother and I have already written the script on that, and it's just going to be super fun.
It's going to be scary?
It's scary. Yeah, it's really scary. But there's nothing slow about this Bigfoot, and I don't want to tell you anything about it.
Oh, I'm excited.
We'll find out about that. What else are we doing? We're doing I'm doing an adaptation of a Robin Cook novel called Mutation, which is really fun. And then we just got a pilot script ordered for a new series at Apple that we're calling The Devil's Door at the moment, which is kind of a supernatural thriller surrounding the Pope and the Vatican. And really, it's super fun. I mean, really, we just literally finished the outline for the pilot script. And so we went in and pitched a 3-season arc on the show with 8 to 10 episodes each thing. And I love the Apple shows. I just binge them all the time. And they're just cool. The folks over there are just really cool and totally get it. And then we're doing, my brother and I are about to direct a movie in April over in Bulgaria called Train. And that's a supernatural thriller on a train about a young girl who, the opening of the movie is she's lying in bed and she hears a noise in a corner of her room. And she looks over and she puts her light in and nothing's there. And just then her door bursts open and 2 guys like you come into her room, grab her, pull her out of her bed, pull her down the stairs. She's screaming for her mom and dad, gets to the bottom of the stairs and her mom and dad are standing there and there's a suitcase and you find out it's an intervention and she's being taken away. And the mom can't stand to see her being taken like that. So she says, I'll take her to the place. So she gets onto a train with her daughter that has no stops, nothing, to go on this 18-hour train ride to take her daughter to this place. Is just a last-ditch effort to get to know her. But you find out that this young girl had a horrible experience. Her younger brother died on her watch. She blamed herself. She tried to take her own life, was clinically dead, and then was saved and came back. But she keeps seeing like horrible things, demonic things, dead people, all this. And her therapist has convinced her to write everything down and draw them. And it's a manifestation of guilt, and you'll just get rid of them on a piece of paper. And on this train, she gets confronted by a scary, scary thing that you think is really trying to scare her when, in fact, it's trying to get her help. And so it's like, that's all I want to tell you, really. And why? What's the help? But it's a journey. This is a movie about a relationship between a mother and a daughter. And, oh, by the way, this is what's occurring to them at this moment. When all this happens.
That's what I think is really fascinating about when you talk about this, Chad, is that you started the show talking about how The Conjuring is really a love story.
Yeah.
Between Ed and Lorraine. But you're drawn into this, what's happening around them, right? And how that plays into this.
World.
Well, that's why I think,
It's really cool.
Signs is a great Christian movie as well.
I love that movie.
Yeah. What do you think, my last question would be, what do you want people to take away from your films? Like, what is it, depending on how dark it goes, what is your hope for your?
Oh my gosh!
Art?
Ultimately, the truth be told, I want you to be thoroughly entertained, and I want you to identify with the characters, and I want you to be curious enough to investigate and see if that really occurred. And that's half the fun of why I like to do true stories, because after you leave one of my films, you can go on the internet and you can research it, and you go, "Oh my gosh." That really happened.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons when we brought the Parent Girls down was they would describe the situations and the scares that occurred to them as young girls. And we would intercut that with the actual footage of the movie where we are depicting what really happened to these girls. So right away you had a sense of, wow, they're telling the truth and I'm seeing the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, and the truth sets you free. So, it's like.
Yeah, the truth is powerful when you're confronted by it. And I think a lot of times people listening to our show or watch your movies, mainly more in the Christian space, have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like the truth is powerful, whether it comes from some crazy person on the street that tells you something or, the most straight-laced pastor on Sunday morning. It's like sort of the beauty of living a full life is that you kind of are always running into God's truth everywhere and you can't walk away from it at a certain point.
I'll tell you one last thing because of what you just said is I can't tell you how many Christians were like, well, my church tells me not to go see movies like that. And I go, like what? What? Yeah. Well, it's a horror film. It's like, well, okay. So you don't go see any movie that you don't know what it's about or anything. It's just depicted as a horror movie.
Yeah.
And well, what do you mean? I said, well, this is a movie that has no sex, no violence, no blood. And it's completely led with two Christians or, Christians that teach you that there's good and evil in the world. And that's, I guess you could call that my horror movie. And I think that's why it crossed over, honestly. I think it just crossed over into a feeling and it opened up a big, big gate for movies like this to go tell real stories, and that depict people's faith. And let's see how they use it. And what do they use it for? And what does that transform? I mean, that's church. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's the same thing. We go in, we get told stories, and how do they affect us?
Right.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, I can identify with that. Sure. Okay. It's the same thing.
Someone told me something I'll never forget. Long before I started Blurry Creatures, they were at Dodger Stadium. They had a U2 show. Okay. So it's like the whole place is packed with U2. And they just finished, With or Without You.
Okay.
And he's like, that's a Christian song.
Yeah. They're all Christian men.
Yeah.
They were a worship band before they were.
And then they break out in Amazing Grace. Yeah. After that, and it was like, that happened at a show? Yeah. He goes, the biggest thing in the world is the truth and the gospel. It's bigger. Like, the reason why Coldplay will never be as big as U2 is because they don't do Christian music. Mm-hmm. It's just that people don't know it's Christian music.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, you got to write that down. You got to put that on,
it's very profound.
But that's kind of what you're doing. You're making Christian movies, but nobody knows.
Yeah, I told you,
bulk of people don't.
Yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, you guys. I feel like I'm never ending there, but it's sort of
no, keep going.
Like one of these. Like, I'm so glad you said that because, the truth is, the commonality the world has is we like to be entertained.
Yeah,
and generally most people like to go see films.
Yeah.
So let's just present movies and stories in such a way that people walk away and they want to emulate that character. Honestly, look at Jesus, live like Jesus. You know what I'm saying? So it's not far from what we're doing. So it's the minute you start manipulating and telling lies and having things work your movie way that become unbelievable, I think that's when you start running into problems, And so by choosing character first and choosing the point of view of the narrative is what people will either or not identify with, basically. So it's interesting talking to Vera Farmiga, who played Lorraine Warren. Vera's family was Romanian. Her father's very religious, and they fled religious persecution to come to the United States. And so we would get into these conversations about religion and all that stuff, and it was just interesting to me. And that was part of the reason she was drawn to that part. She kind of wanted to see where she was going to land and things like that. But it was...
it's really why I loved Angels in the Outfield,
Well,
Luke always ends on a serious note. You get too serious, Luke has to make a joke. He's working it out. His heart is...
they caught those deep fly balls with the help of the angels. There's a lot of just eternal truth.
But it's just hard for us because when we produce this show, everyone's like, it's too dark for me. I can't. We get these emails from people that kind of like criticize us and attack us. Like, you guys you're going the wrong direction. I'm like, we started the show then in the wrong direction because the show has not changed.
Come on, this is what this kid, Cameron Burnett, the kid I told you about in Spain, listens to your show from Texas, and he loves your show. He and his wife listen to it, and these are believers, and they love your show.
Shout out to Cameron.
Yeah, shout out.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Cameron. But I agree. I just totally agree. It's kind of I feel, lastly, like this is kind of why I was put on this planet, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I believe, and we'll see if this happens, is that my brother and I have been put in a position to be one of those teams that makes the noise. That we're a couple of things I'm working on now, one of which I couldn't share with you guys, could be a game changer for a lot of people. And I believe with the success of The Conjuring, that gave me the carte blanche to be approached to do these kind of films and the credibility to pull it off correctly. And I'm super excited about it. I was given a talent. I know that.
Yeah.
So, Lord.
This is my last thought.
Again?
Chuck.
That's your last
Or
thought
Charles,
again.
you can call me Charles, too.
Charles, that's
The Bible
dignified.
has a story of Saul. In the Bible, it's a witch doctor. And I think if you were the Disney version of Christianity on church would like on Sunday would like edit out that part, be like, oh no, we can't put that in. I mean, think about what they let go in the Bible. If it was a modern day script, or if it was a modern day like sermon, you know what I'm saying? It's like the Bible has all this stuff that would get written in the writer's room. We got to take that out. That's not okay, right? Don't you think a lot of those stories would make?
I've been working with a lot of like kind of heavy hitters in the supernatural world of the Bible and real scholars. I mean, doctors that have written books on this stuff that are so knowledgeable about every little tangent and things that they talk about where the interpretation, they leave it very little for interpretive, and it's more of educational because they pulled together different elements of the Bible that prove this particular point as to why this occurred. And again, because one of them has said there is no coincidence in the Bible. It's like the biggest matrix you've ever come across.
Sure.
It's all intertwined. So when you take those stories and we talk to these authorities, and I'm realizing like, wow, we're really onto something here. This is cool. And what a better way to have church than through entertainment. It's wonderful.
The truth was never scary, and it was never a problem. It was just, it is what it was. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thanks,
Where
Chad.
can our listeners follow along or get involved or send you hate mail? What do you want?
Hate mail. We have a community called the Hayes Horror Community that they can join. It doesn't cost anything. Go on there, and it's mostly focused on writers wanting to be in the industry, but people share stories on there and stuff like that. And then the other thing is we just started a website called first-look.net. And as creators, you go on there if you have really great stories and you're willing to put pen to paper, you'll be able to post them on this website. And filmmakers such as myself will be perusing those ideas to possibly commission an option from you, or if you're a writer, get you to write it, or hey, just write the screenplay, and if it's interesting, I'll read the screenplay. So otherwise, we're on Facebook, Hayes Brothers, and that's it. There's an Instagram I don't really do, but I'm really bad at all that stuff.
Hey, you're busy.
Thanks, Chad. This is fun because we've been talking about this for quite a long time.
I'm stoked. I really enjoyed this a lot.
Yeah, so do we.